Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where we've finally completed the triptych of Century games. You may remember that some time ago we played Century Eastern Wonders, the middle game in the triptych, and we also played From Sand to Sea, the combo game that happens when you smash these two together. This year at UKG 19, we managed to pick up Century A New World as well. And this completes the series, the trilogy, and delivers on the promise that all three will combine together to create an entirely new game. In fact, if you have all three of these boxes, you have a grand total of 7 games, which are varying combinations of the three. We've played Century New World. We haven't played it on the channel. It's a worker placement game in which you are making action selection in order to purchase victory cards. But through your actions, you're attempting to gain cubes of a specific color or change them into other cubes. And these cubes represent goods from the New World. So you've got like corn and meat and tobacco. Century Eastern Wonder is more like sort of route optimization, because what you're doing is you're sailing a boat around the sea and you're trying to land on the tiles you want to land on in order to take the actions you want to take. So it's not worker placement so much as it's worker route management. And then Century Spice Road is, of course, the card drafting variant, where you are taking actions based on the cards you draft into your hand and playing those cards out in order to do the actions printed on the cards. And if you smash these two together, then you can draft those cards and play them for their actions, or you can use them to move around that sea map. And then when you smash this one in, you actually get 7 different options. But what we're looking at in this video is, of course, From East to West, the full triptych. From East to West Part 3 is a 2 to 4 player game. It's pretty much entirely worker placement. It probably takes about an hour to play. So Michael and I have played the game on the channel, and we'll be putting out the gameplay episodes starting tomorrow. But what I'm going to do today is just run you down the rules so you can see how these 3 games fit together and what they have to offer. I usually do a massive component breakdown, but I'm not going to do that in this video because you don't need to see everything in these 3 boxes, and in fact I think it would only add some confusion. Instead, what I'm going to do is just show you the components you need to play From East to West Part 3, the full trilogy. So we'll do a component rundown, and then I'll show you how to set up, and then I'll show you how to play. What I'm going to do, because I'm just like that, is reveal the components in the order of the trilogy. So we'll start by looking at the components from Century Spice Road. Century Spice Road comes with a big old deck of cards in it, and the ones we're going to need are these ones here, which are the action cards that you can purchase in the game. They've got a purple back like that, and they are distinct from the victory cards. Don't be tempted to include these purple bordered starter cards, which are not used for this game, only Century Spice Road. And this deck of cards is all we need from Spice Road. So the second game in the trilogy is Eastern Wonders. And we're going to need a few more pieces from Eastern Wonders. So for Century Eastern Wonders, we're going to need a few more components here. So I've put together these little player bags here, which contain a number of these outposts and also a player boat. What you're not going to need all of these pieces. What you're going to need is the boat. And then you're going to need 12 of these outposts as well. So you'll need to take one set for each player in your game. We'll also need these sea tiles with the different goods on them. The exceptions are the 4 tiles with the dock symbol. We don't need those. And the 4 tiles here with the boat symbol. These are blank ocean spaces. We only need 1 of those. And finally, a New World. Now you'll need most of the components from New World for this. So here is Century A New World. So you've got a bunch of map tiles here in New World. There are, in fact, 6 of them, and we will need them all for the complete triptych game. So get those out, put them to one side. Now you've also got this overview which shows you all of the different actions and things that you can do on the New World game board as well. And this is applicable to the full triptych, so you'll want to keep this handy for all the players to look at. So we've got these player boards, and these are double-sided, so you'll definitely be needing these on their B side in order to play this game. You'll need these bowls, and you'll need these bonus victory point tokens. You're going to need these green foresty exploration tokens as well. Here are the spices I've been talking about. Or in this case, they are goods from the New World. This is corn. I'm pretty sure this one's tobacco. Anyway, you're going to need all 4 spices. You're also going to need 1 bag of little worker people for each of the player colors that you recovered from Eastern Wonders. 1 set of worker peoples in a color for each of your players to go with their outposts and boat. And these are the Fortress Victory cards. And you're going to need some of these, but not all of them, because they're not all used in every single game. There's different selections based on which combination of games you're playing. That's it. We got everything we need out of Century: A New World. So now that we've got all the components out the box, we're ready to begin the setup. So when we're setting up Century from East to West Part 3, we will be setting up essentially 3 boards. We're going to have one board which is sort of the New World stuff. We're going to have one board that combines the New World with Century Spice Road, and another board that is essentially the water tiles from Eastern Wonders with your boat going on little submissions. And what I'll do is I'll show you how to set up each board in order, starting with the New World board, which is probably the most complicated anyway. Now, all of the boards that come with a New World are coded down in the bottom left corner. Depending on what version of the game you're playing will depend on which side you're using. So for this one, we're going to have A2 next to B2, above C1, and next to F2, like that. And the important thing you're looking for here really is these boat symbols down here, which are going to be used for the Eastern Wonders map. Something helpful you can do when you're setting up this board is to put out the goods trays next to it, and you want to put them in ascending order of quality to help people remember. So brown cubes are the most valuable, so they go at the top, and yellow cubes, corn, I think in this, are the most common, so they go at the bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through this deck of victory cards here. So we have to take out all the cards that aren't used for this player count and all the cards that aren't used for this version of the game. So we've got the victory cards here, and you've got these 4 distinguishing marks. We've got the player count cards here and the star cards here. The star cards are only used for certain versions of the game, so we won't be using the black star cards in this version, so we'll take those out. But we will be using the white star cards, so we'll leave those in. Furthermore, if we're playing with 3 or more players, we'll leave the 3+ cards in. If we're only playing with 2, we'll take them out. And if we're playing with fewer than 4 players, we'll take all of the cards with the 4 symbol out. But if we're playing with 4 players, we'll leave them in. I'm going to set up a 3-player game, so I'll take this out. You might note that some cards match your player count, but also have the black star on them. You want to take those out. All the cards with the black star come out regardless of whether they're applicable for your player count. After you're done building your deck, just give it a big shuffle. Then what we're going to do is we're going to place it at the top of the board and flip over one random victory card into each of the fort locations on the board we just created. The deck goes here, and cards come out here. Now remember these 10 exploration tiles we got out of New World? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to put them face down with the bushes side up so that we can randomize them. And we're going to give them a shuffle and put them out randomly on each of these action spaces that have an exploration symbol. Now one thing to note about these exploration symbols is that these ones are blank, so they'll definitely be covered. But these ones up here have 2 to 3 on them, which means they'll only be covered in a 2 to 3 player game. Since we're setting up a 3-player game, we will put out exploration tokens on these spaces. When we put these out, they just go down face up like this, so you can see what symbols there are on them. In a 4-player game, we would return 3 to the box, but because it's a 3-player game, we'll cover these up here and just return 1 to the box. Now what we'll do is we'll set up the Century Spice Road part of the board, which is these 2 sand tiles here. So these 2 sand tiles here are tiles E2 and D2. There is another side, but that's only used in the base game for replayability purposes. So we're going to put out E next to D like this to create our Century Spice Road board. Then what we'll do is we'll take our big old deck of Century Spice Road cards, give that a good old shuffle, and we're going to put that out next to the board here, and flip 1 card into each of the 4 spaces. Now what we're going to do is randomize these bonus tiles into the bonus spaces on the game board that we've set up. There are 8 bonus spaces, this set here, and this set here, and they have numbers on them. So these are times 4 and these are times 2, which means we're going to be putting out stacks of 4 here and stacks of 2 here. And they're going to be face up, but of course we want to randomize them. So you can just grab 4 tiles like this and put them face up down here. And in some versions of the game, you'll remove some of these, but in this version, we randomize it from the pool of all 25. If you've done this correctly, you will have laid out all of the tiles, and so there will be none left to put back. So now we're going to take the player boards and we're going to take one per player. So in this setup here, we'll be using the B side of the player boards, and you can tell it's the B side because it's got all of this stuff here and also this little B in the corner. Now this symbol next to that B is the first player symbol and the other boards don't have it. So for our 3-player game, it's this. We're going to shuffle them and deal them out to each player so that the players don't know who's got the first player board, and then that player will be the starting player. So once each player has got their player boards, we'll be giving them out their player colors. So for this demonstration, we can use pink, white, and our blue pieces from over here. So in order to set up a player board, you will need 12 of these outposts. The remaining 11 can go back into the Eastern Wonders box because we don't need them. You'll also need this boat and all 12 of the workers as well. Now we'll look at the boat later, but for now just take the outposts and lie them down onto each space of this grid with a points value on it so that they're all covered. This means you'll have a diagonal line through the middle that is open. Next, take 6 of your workers and put them here on your player board. Take the other 6 and put them somewhere out of the way where they won't confuse you. You can unlock these later by taking actions on the game board. In a 2-player game, you'll start with 7, but because this is a 3-player game, we won't have that. And now the very last thing we've got to do before we're ready to start playing is, of course, to set up the ocean board. So the first thing we're going to do is take this blank ocean tile and put it out. Then we're going to take the 6 tiles we have of each of the different spice types in a stack. And we're randomly going to remove 3 tiles from each pile to create a new pile. You can return the remaining tiles to the Eastern Wonders box. You won't need them. And you give these a little shuffle. And then the idea is, without really looking at them so that it's completely random, set them out connected to this water tile. And the game board box does suggest a layout, which Michael and I will use in the gameplay series tomorrow. But it does suggest that you can do this randomly, and each tile need only touch 2 other tiles. The only requirement is that each tile touches 2 other tiles. But I'm going to set up the suggested setup used in the rulebook here for you today. And when you're putting these out, you want to put them so that the spices are on the left side and the actions are facing the players on the top. And so once you've done this, each player takes their boat and just puts it into the empty sea space in the middle of the board. So the very last thing to do is give each player their starting spices. And if you're the first player, you always start with 3 yellow cubes. They go here into your inventory on your player board, and we'll discuss that when we get to gameplay. The second player always gets 4, and the third player gets 4 as well. If we had a 4th player, they would also get 4, but they would get a red cube as well. And so now that that is all set up, we are ready to begin the game, and I will start explaining the rules for how to play Century from East to West, Part 3. What we've got here is the full sort of range of trade and spice from the Age of Discovery. We've got the brand new world here full of exciting new resources. We've got the spice road here from China through India down to Europe. And over here we've got Sea Adventure. I'm not really sure where that is. Maybe that's around the African Peninsula. I'm not sure. What we've got going on is many, many ways to trade spices from the bottom of this rank all the way up to the top. And these represent all kinds of exciting spices from this period in time, like cardamom and cinnamon and goods like tobacco and animal hide and all kinds of stuff. But ultimately what you need to know is that the yellow cubes are your basic, most common cube, and the brown cubes are your most valuable and exciting cubes. And if you want to win this game, ultimately what you're going to be doing is saving these cubes to buy these fort cards along the top of the board here. The game ends when one player has purchased 8 of these cards. So to some extent, players have a control over how long the game will take. If you want to rush by those cards and try and get a bunch of the cheap ones really quickly and end the game before anyone else can get cards, that's a viable strategy. If you really want to explore these boards and develop points and combos that way, that's a viable strategy too. The way we're going to play the game is by taking these little stacks of settlers we've got here on our board and putting them out in the action spaces on these 2 boards here, which will allow us to move cubes around, gain new cubes, buy fort cards, take actions on these Spice Road cards here as well, and also move our boats around the ocean over here. Ultimately, all of this cube trading is to enable us to purchase things that are worth victory points. And there are 5 ways to get victory points in the end game. The first way is through these fort cards that trigger game end. Each of the fort cards has a victory point symbol down here on the bottom. And this is the sort of universal symbol for victory points here, so it's kind of like this white number with a gold outline. And so at the end of the game, you'll total up all of the points on your cards that you've managed to purchase. Over the course of the game, you'll be able to put out these outposts onto the C spaces on the C board. And as you reveal the outposts, you'll be able to get points that way as well. As you can see, these bonus tiles also give you points, and this is based on symbols that are present in your player tableau. The way you acquire these symbols is on your fort cards here, but you can acquire them one other way as well, which is through these exploration tiles here. But these are the only 2 ways to get symbols. Some of these exploration tiles just have points on them straight up, so any you see here are worth points as well. And finally, any spice you have on your player board at the end that's not yellow is worth 1 point as well. So in the end, you'll total up all of the points from those 5 different sources, and whoever has the most points is the winner. If there is a tie for points, the player in the final position is the winner. So starting from the first player, play will go in clockwise order, with each player doing one thing on their turn, and then play passing to the next player. On your turn, there are just 2 things you can do. You can either put out workers into a space to take the action on that space, or you can collect all of your workers from the board in what's called a rest action. A rest is essentially miss a turn, because all you're going to be doing is picking up all your workers from the board and returning them to your player board. So let's take a look at some of the action spaces on this New World board here, so we can figure out just how that works. So here on the New World board, what we've got are a bunch of different actions that you can take. Note that in order to take a space, first you must put out the number of workers depicted on the space itself. So for example, if a player wants to take this action here, they have to put out 1 worker. Note that there are 2 rules for putting out workers into spaces. You cannot put workers in a space that contains your own workers. So the pink player can never take this action again while there's a pink worker here. The second is that you cannot put workers in a space that contains this exploration token. These tokens must be removed before these spaces can be used. When the pink player takes a rest action, they'll collect these workers back up and put them back on their player board, at which time this action is free for the pink player to take again if they so desire. However, if someone takes an action space that you want, you can outbid them on it. So for example, after our pink player has taken and resolved this action, their turn will be over. But if the white player who plays next wants this space, they can put out 2 workers, and the pink player's worker is returned to their player board, and now the white player can take this action. Now, the pink player could then come back and outbid them on a later turn with 3 workers. So what do all these actions do, and how do I know what's good to do? Well, I'll give you an overview of some of the actions that are unique to this particular game setup, but when it comes to Sentry, there are basically 3 things you're going to do with an action space. The first is get more cubes. You're going to want more of these spices so that you can purchase these fort cards. You're also going to need the right spices. And there are 3 ways to manipulate your inventory of spices. So the first way is to simply get more cubes. The second way is to trade some cubes for other cubes. And the final way is to upgrade cubes. So let's have a look at some of the spaces on the board that illustrate these mechanics. So these spaces here all allow you to take more cubes. If you put out a worker in this space here, you'll gain 2 yellow cubes. If you put the worker out here, you'll gain a red cube. These spaces are currently locked, which means they can't be used until these exploration tokens are removed. But if someone were to take this action, they could trade 1 brown cube for 1 cube of each color. When you take a trade action like this, you can do the trade as many times as you like. So I'm going to be talking about trade actions like this one a lot. This is your inventory on your player board. Here we've got the pink player's board with their inventory here. Now if they take this trade action, they can trade 1 red cube for 3 yellow cubes. They can do this as many times as they like. So they could trade 2 for 6 if they wanted. Or they could trade all 4 for 12. But this is silly because they don't actually have space to afford the 12. Now they can put them out onto their player board if they want, but at the end of your turn, you're going to have to discard down to 10 cubes. And you can choose which ones to get rid of. Then you've got this upgrade action here. If you take the upgrade action, you can upgrade 1 cube twice or 2 cubes once. So by taking this action here, we could turn 2 yellows into 2 reds, or we could turn 1 yellow into a green. Now you'll see variations of this mechanic across all of the boards available in this game. So you can see here on the Century Spice Road cards, what we've got are trades as well. And when you take this action, you can of course, just like normal, do the trade as many times as you like. Some of the Spice Road cards allow you to just gain cubes, like this card here, which allows you to gain a green and a yellow cube. And over here on the C board, you can see again this trade action. Now there are some restrictions on how these ones work, and we'll talk about those in just a minute when we talk about the boat spaces. So those are the three basic Century mechanics, and you're going to be using those mechanics to collect and create trade cubes in order to gain the cubes you need to purchase these fort cards. You see the fort cards here all have prices along the bottom. And these prices here are the cubes you need to spend. So in order to acquire the fort cards, what you have to do is put down workers in these spaces equal to the number of workers printed on the action space, and then you can gain the card. And when you gain a fort card, for example, we'll say this one, you have to pay the resource cost along the bottom of the card, and then you can take it and put it into your player area. Then the other cards move down the line, and a new card comes off the top of the deck into the most expensive space. When you take a fort card, you return the spices to the communal pool, and then you can put the fort card just into your play area. The fort cards obviously offer these symbols here that are worth victory points at the end of the game if you get the pertinent bonus tokens. But they also offer these unique abilities which affect the game as well, like sort of asymmetrical powers. For example, this one says whenever you take an action with a basket on it, gain an extra yellow cube. These player powers are associated with the symbol on the card, so you'll find that all the cards with the hammer symbol have this gain extra resources power on them. And so here we're referencing now the symbols on the action spaces here. So for example, if our blue player who has this card goes ahead and takes this action here, you can see the basket symbol, which means they're going to gain a green cube and a yellow cube. The cards with these Dreamcatcher symbols give you worker discounts. Then you'll pay one less worker for that space down to a minimum of 1. So this space here will cost 1, this space here will cost 1, and this space here will cost 2. Now these fort cards with the satchel unlock your additional workers. Remember at the beginning of the game we set aside 5 or 6 workers, depending on the player count. Well, you can unlock those workers by taking the cards with these worker symbols on. Sometimes those are also unlocked by these exploration tiles. And the number you unlock is based on the number of symbols present on the card or tile. If you run out of workers in the reserve pool, you can't gain any more. This card here has the exploration symbol on it, and it allows you to remove one of these exploration tiles here on the board. When you take the tile, you get the reward depicted on the tile, whether that's additional workers or resources of some kind, or even additional endgame victory symbols. When you take the tile, gain the reward, put it in your play area, and then this space that you've removed it from becomes available for use. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about how the New World board works. What I'll do is at the end I'll talk about scoring with these bonus tiles because they're the only really tricky thing to score. But before I get to that, let's talk about how we gain them. The first thing to note about the bonus tiles is that you have 4 spaces to put them on your player board. Once you've gained 4 bonus tiles, you can't gain any more. You cannot choose to get rid of them either, so choose carefully. When you gain a bonus tile, you'll have to take it from the top of the stack, which will reveal a new available tile below. There are 2 ways to get the bonus tiles, by interacting with the boat board and by interacting with the Spice Road board. I'll talk about the Spice Road board first because that's the simplest, and it will also tell you how the Spice Road board functions. There are 2 kinds of action spaces here on the Spice Road board. The first action space is the one above the cards here. And you'll notice that they escalate in cost. So what you can do is you can put a person down, you can put one of your workers down into this space here, and when you do that, you take the action on the card, and you must take this action at least once in order to take the space. In this case, it's a trade action, so we could do it as many times as we can afford, and then once we've done that, we take the card, we put it face down next to our player board. And when a card is collected from the Century board, the cards just slide down and make a new space available at the top next to the draw deck here. There is another available action here on this board, which is this one here, which is basically reset the market. So if you take your workers and put them down here, you'll activate this space. Then you can take all 4 of the cards in the marketplace and replace them. After that, you can immediately have another go. So you can sort of replace them and then purchase a new one if you so desire. When you have another go, you do of course have to pay the worker cost for that. It's not free. When you collect 4 face-down sentry cards next to your player board, you can then collect one of the bonus tiles from the sentry board. So you can take one tile from the top of any of these 4 stacks. Note that you can do this every time you collect 4 of the sentry cards. You keep them though, because you might need them for scoring mechanics, such as this tile in the end game. The water board is entirely controlled by the actions here on the F board on the New World side. So we have here 5 spaces that allow us to interact with the water board. These 3 spaces along the bottom here are all about moving your ship. So if you take this action here, you can move your ship to 1 adjacent water tile. Here you can do it twice, and here you can move your ship to any water tile on the board. But this must be unlocked before it can be used. When you take this action here, you can take the trade action on the water tile that your ship is present on. You can do this as many times as you can afford. When you take this trade action, you can take the trade action as many times as you have cubes to afford it. Down here, you've got the trade post trade action. When you take this action here, you can take a trade action on any of the water tiles containing one of your trade posts. When you take the move action, you can move your boat to 1 adjacent space, and then you can put out one of your outposts. Now, if there's no other trade outpost there, then it's free to put out one of your trade outposts. So what we'll do is we'll check the spice on the space we've just moved into. And then we'll come over here to our player board and we'll take the leftmost house from that row. So in this case, we have to take this one. We cannot choose to take one further along. And we'll put it out into that space. Now, even if our boat moves on to a new space later, we can always take this trade action. Furthermore, this has gained us points on our player board and brought us closer to unlocking bonus tiles. You see, whenever you free up a complete column, then you unlock this symbol here, which means that you can choose one of the 4 bonus tiles from the water area to put on your player board. These are the 4 bonus tiles in the water area, so we can take the top one of any of these decks for our player board. However, there are a few restrictions that make your life a bit more difficult when it comes to the water board. So if our blue player moves in here and wants to put out an outpost, they must pay 1 cube, because there's already 1 outpost there. The cube they pay is their choice, and it's returned to the main supply. So if later our pink player wants to come in here, they can, but the first thing they have to do is put a cube back in the storage, because they've ended their movement in a space with another player. Then, if they want to put out an outpost, they'll have to return 2 cubes to the supply, 1 for each of the outposts already there. So the pink player would have to pay a total of 3 cubes back to the supply in order to complete this move. In a 2-player game, then the outposts automatically cost 2 cubes instead of 1. So for blue to put out this outpost, he'll have to pay 2 instead of the typical 1. It should be noted that a 4th player can also put out an outpost here. 3 is not the limit per tile, even though there are only 3 spaces for outposts. So you can see as the sea fills up with outposts, it's going to get more and more contentious and more expensive to put out your outposts there. Now, I think that just about covers everything in terms of gameplay. So the game end is triggered when 1 player collects a grand total of 8 of these fork cards in their player area. Then the round is finished, so if that's the first player, the white and blue player will have 1 final turn, and the game will end. If it's the blue player, then the game will just end. And then you'll total up your scores to find out who's won. And of course, the player in the last position will be the tiebreaker. So, scoring is very simple, and you just total up all the points on all of your cards there, on all of your bonus tiles. You total up all of the points revealed on your player board as well from under the outposts. You total up all of 1 point for each cube you have that's not yellow. The only complicated scoring mechanic is the bonus tiles and the symbols. So I'm just going to run you through a quick example of that, and then you're ready to play From East to West, Part 3. So here we have an example of what the blue player's board might look like in the end game. We've got 2 free columns and 8 sentry cards, so we've managed to pick up 4 bonus tiles. We've also managed to get 5 cards before the game end was triggered. And so what we're going to do is we're going to total up the points here. We're going to total up the points on these cards. We've only got these 4 yellow resources, so we're not going to get any points for that. But what we will get is points for these bonus tiles as well. And we don't have any exploration tiles, so we won't get any points for that. But I've picked these 4 bonus tiles to show you an example of how to score these symbols, and also this one just to show you what this means. You can see here we've got sets of symbols and this solo symbol. So this one's the easiest to resolve. It's going to give us 2 points for each exploration symbol that appears in our tableau. we've got 1, so we get 2 points. Next up, we've got this hammer and dreamcatcher set here, which is going to give us 3 points for each set. And as you can see, we've got 2 hammers and 2 dreamcatchers, so we've got 2 sets for a total of 6 points. Now finally, we've got exploration and dreamcatchers here, another set. Now, symbols can be doubled up across bonus tiles, which means that even though we've already scored points for all of the dreamcatchers and the exploration symbol on our other 2 tiles, we still get 3 points for having one set that matches this as well. That means that the more bonus tiles you get that share symbols, and the more of those symbols you collect, the more duplication of points you'll have in the end game, which is of course awesome. Finally, we've got this tile here, which is going to give us 1 point for every 2 workers we unlocked during the course of the game. Now, as you can see here, our blue player has got a grand total of 10 workers, but they started with 6, so we remove those 6, which means we've unlocked 4 over the course of the game for a total of 2 points. Now you understand how endgame scoring works. I hope you're excited to see how this game is played, because I'll be joined tomorrow by my buddy Michael as we play through From East to West, Part 3, 2 players, and I hope this has given you some insight into how the game works to help you get playing with your friends at home as well. So thank you very much for joining me for this video, and I'll see you all tomorrow for our East to West adventure. Bye everyone!